Thank you, Ariella, for that update. Well, joining us now to discuss the current push for a hostage deal with Israel and Hamas is Dr. Gerald Steinberg, the CEO of NGO Monitor. Gerald, thank you for joining us. As always, pleasure to have you on. It seems Israel has been playing this back and forth game with Hamas when it comes to hostage negotiations for quite a while. What is different or might be different about these particular negotiations?
Thanks, Emily. I think the most important thing is that we're now, about 8 days away from the inauguration of President Trump. President Trump has said that all hell will break loose if the hostages are not released. There's a lot of pressure on all sides, particularly on Hamas, to do something different. But at the same time, they want to hold on to their bargaining chip. That's why they took all these hostages on October 7th, 2023. That's why they're holding them. It's a get out of jail free. It's a means of maintaining this terror organization and avoiding the Israeli destruction. So we're very much in that situation, but perhaps with a lot of pressure to change the positions.
Now, we see the government now speaking about a complete defeat of Hamas should there not be a deal. We also see Hamas firing rockets again and returning to areas, some of which have already been cleared out by the IDF earlier in this war. Is Israel approaching Gaza with the right strategy, in your opinion?
Well, I think to a certain degree, there are lots of questions that can be asked. We had, I think, 10 casualties in the last week from bombs that were placed underneath the vehicles of the soldiers in northern Gaza now. And that's a very high toll. And here we are 15 months after the war began. So there are questions that are being raised within the army, outside the army, whether this can be done more efficiently with less loss of life. At the same time, it's important that Hamas is weakened, that its leadership is destroyed, that it cannot regroup and restart this war, whether it's in 3 months or 3 years or later. The reason we're getting rockets now is primarily because they know that the IDF is beginning to find the ones that they had carefully stored in the areas like Jabalia and Beit Hanun, places that were not carefully searched and largely destroyed in the initial phases of the war. So they're using the rockets. It's called use it or lose it. I don't think that's the significant issue. The significant issue is their ability to hit IDF troops in the area. That means they still have capability with troops on the ground, with terrorists on the ground. So the war, Israel's war, is not over. Whether it can be minimized, whether a deal can be made with Hamas to get those hostages back, and that's important. What are the terms? Are they all the hostages going to come back? I think if not, it's going to be very difficult for Prime Minister Netanyahu to agree to some sort of a ceasefire.
Well, I wanted to ask you that actually as our last question here. In the event that we are able to see a deal in the coming days, I mean, what do you anticipate that Israel's concessions will look like? And is it wise to actually end this war right now? Does it even solve the problem?
I think we have to be very careful from the outside. It's very hard to know what the situation is, how the IDF sees it, how the different players inside see it. There are those who will argue that if Israel does agree to a ceasefire now, you can go back as we did in Lebanon and continue when the weapons are found, continue to search and destroy those weapons and troops that are Hamas terrorists, actually, who are in areas where they have agreed not to be in. So there's going to be a lot of questions about the details. I think the critical issue is how much pressure the United States can put on, how much pressure Netanyahu and the government could put on, particularly against Qatar. They're basically the foreign power that has been supporting Hamas for all of these years. If Qatar says to the Hamas, look, this is it, we're not going to be able to support you after January 21st, then I think we'll get a deal.
All right, well, we are out of time, but thank you so much for joining us as always and shedding some light on this difficult situation, Dr. Gerald Steinberg.
Thank you.